Bleeding Kansas, the beginning. Before the horrors of the American Civil War, in which the North battled against the South over issues such as states' rights and slavery, another smaller war broke out in the Kansas Territory over the same issues from 1854 to 1861. This small but bloody war between abolitionist and pro-slavery supporters began with the pushing of legislation which forced people to take a side on the issue of slavery. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 established the boundaries of these new territories, which opened up the land for legal settlement and allowed the residents of these territories to decide upon popular vote whether they wished to be a slave or a free state. This apparent free choice drove many to violence in order to bring over voters to their side or to eliminate any that opposed their own agenda. This murderous form of campaigning would go down in history as the Border Wars of Bleeding Kansas. Those involved: the people of Bleeding Kansas. On December 14, 1853, Senator Augustus C. Dodge introduced a bill called the Committee of the Territories, which called for the organization of the Nebraska Territory and would later become the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois chaired this bill because he was a firm believer in manifest destiny and believed that Kansas and Nebraska would further realize the United States reaching from sea to sea. The Native Americans were affected by the creation of these territories and the following bloodshed. While whites in the territory fought each other over pro-slavery or anti-slavery, the natives were attacked in an effort to push them out of their own land to benefit the settlers. President Franklin Pierce supported the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and the bill became law in May 1854. The reaction to this law prompted Eli Thayer to form the New England Immigrant Aid Company to send settlers into Kansas that were anti-slavery. Henry Ward Beecher, an abolitionist minister, furnished the settlers with rifles that came to be known as Beecher's Bibles. In opposition to this anti-slavery settlement push, armed Southerners from Missouri came over into Kansas to vote for a pro-slavery congressional delegate. These border ruffians steered the vote toward pro-slavery. However, most of the settlers who had come to Kansas were only interested in setting up homesteads. They had no interest in slaveholding or plantation living. These free staters voted to outlaw black people, slave or free, from Kansas so the territory could be predominantly white. As these factions fought for control of the territory, tensions increased. Bleeding Kansas, the violence. As members of the two factions battled politically for or against slavery at the polls, others battled violently outside of the voting areas, resulting in deaths. The three most notable violent acts committed during the Bleeding Kansas confrontations are the sack of Lawrence in 1856, the Potawatomi Massacre in 1856, and the Mar de Zier Massacre in 1858. In 1856, the sack of Lawrence was an attack on anti-slavery supporters in the town of Lawrence, Kansas. An angry mob of pro-slavery supporters ransacked the town and destroyed the Free State Hotel, which the Free State leadership used to coordinate their movements against the pro-slavery supporters. After the attack on Lawrence, anti-slavery supporters retaliated by attacking Fort Titus, a nearby fortified cabin defended by slavery supporters. The anti-slavery retaliators forced Colonel Henry Titus to surrender his sword in recompense. Later that same year, John Brown led the Potawatomi Massacre, in which 5 pro-slavery men were killed. John Brown justified his actions through his belief that slavery could only be stopped through violent protest. While some agreed with Brown in his actions, many were appalled at the killings, which hurt the Free State cause as much as it helped. Finally, in the year 1858, the Mar de Zier Massacre, in which 11 anti-slavery men were taken from their homes, occurred. This last major act of violence resulted in 5 dead, 5 wounded, and 1 who escaped unscathed by pretending to be dead. The massacre, led by Charles Hamilton, who was a pro-slavery man that was run out of Kansas by anti-slavery raiders, led to John Brown writing The Parallels, a widely published letter that pointed out that while many posses were in search of John Brown, nothing was being done to prosecute Hamilton. The events leading up to Bleeding Kansas from 1854 to 1861 were similar to the civil rights movements from 1955 to 1968. Legislation that was strongly opposed or supported brought about nonviolent and violent activists from both sides. Once again, the issue of blacks and whites having equal rights and opportunities was challenged by those who believed all were equal versus those who wanted a segregated society. Factions occurred within the government leaders as well as the public sector in both Bleeding Kansas and the civil rights movement. The significance of Bleeding Kansas was part of a political storm throughout the United States that led to the beginning of the bloodshed that would come to the fore during the Civil War.